What's up, Renegades? It's Lupine Fiasco. I'm back with another Fi deck tech. You all seemed to like my Emberblade deck tech from last week. A lot of you said kind things about it. Thank you so much. It has a staggering number of views, at least for me. I never expected the deck tech to blow up as much as it did. Hopefully that means you are all enjoying the deck. You're finding success with it on Talishar. Emberblade is only one of the ways you can play Fi and have success. I am here to show you a different way to build the deck, a different way to sequence, a different way to win your games, and that is off the back of Harmonized Kodachi and Mask of Momentum. This deck list is available in the video description below. I highly encourage you to take it to Talishar, try it out, compare it to Emberblade, and see what you like best. While you are looking at the video description, be sure to like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions or suggestions for me, and please, 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 if you have not already done so, subscribe to the channel. It is the best way to support me and support daily Fi content for free. You will get a notification whenever I post a new video. I post videos 5 days a week, and you will be doing me a big solid. Let's very quickly cover the difference between Kadachi and Emberblade. I am planning a more in-depth video in the near future, but at a bare minimum, Kadachi decks will deal less damage on a turn-by-turn basis, but put out more chain links. The disadvantage of this, of course, being that you deal less damage over a longer game. The advantage being that you are more likely to trigger Mask of Momentum. You are more likely to force your opponent to interact with you in terms of blocking, and if your opponent does not want to block, if they want to play Solitaire, you are a 5 intellect hero. But let's jump into the deck tech itself. I will cover all of this in more detail, the finer points of Kadachi Mask of Momentum play. If you watched last week's Emberblade deck tech, you will know that a lot of this information is the same. Draconic Head Jabs are always good. Lava Burst is always good. If you haven't seen that deck tech, I encourage you to watch it. But there are a number of differences between Kadachi and Emberblade, and even playing out the same cards in a turn cycle will look different between Kadachi and Emberblade. Flamescale Furnace will be your chest piece of choice in the vast majority of matchups. It blocks 3. That's really the only thing it does 99% of the time. You may end up using the once per turn instant activation to fix all red hands. Most notably with the Furnace is if you pitch a red to play something, then pitch another red to Furnace. If one of those 2 reds in your pitch zone has a cost of 0, you will generate 2 resources and be able to attack with both Kodachis. This can lead to some cute lines where you can squeeze a bit more damage out of a turn cycle, where you may be able to threaten a Mask of Momentum trigger where you wouldn't have been able to do so before. But in 99% of cases, Flamescale Furnace blocks 3. That is its only purpose in the deck, and you should not expect to get any more value out of it than that. Harmonized Kodachi is our weapon of choice in most matchups. We are going to bring Emberblade into a few more matchups than you may expect, but our game plan and our build focuses around the Kadachi, specifically using 2 Kadachi attacks with a brand with Cinder Claw and 2 other attack actions to pick up a Phoenix Flame and put 6 attacks on a combat chain. The advantage of pushing 6 links is that we now threaten Mask of Momentum twice. Most heroes can block the first Mask of Momentum trigger fairly easily. very few heroes can block the second one easily. So if we are threatening 2 Mask Momentum triggers in a turn, and especially if those trigger threats come off the back of 4 power attacks, Mounting Anger, Blaze Headlong, Ravenous Rabble, they can be very difficult for heroes to block and still have a good turn of their own. That is the entire point of this deck. The entire game plan is force your opponent to block awkwardly, force your opponent to give up their armor early in the game, so that you can threaten Mask Momentum triggers with blue Brand with Cinder Claw, Phoenix Flame, dumpy go-again attacks that your opponent really doesn't want to commit a card to blocking, but they also don't want to let you draw a card. The advantage of Mask of Momentum over Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is that over the course of a longer game, and your games with Mask of Momentum do go longer than Pouncing Lynx, you are getting more value from your mask. Either you are getting blocks from your opponent that they would otherwise not make, or you are drawing enough cards over the course of the game that you are getting more than 6 or 7 points of value out of the cards you've drawn, as opposed to a once per game Lava Burst, Salt the Wound. Mask of Momentum also blocks too, which is not something that comes up very often with Pouncing Lynx. If you are playing Pouncing Lynx correctly, you are always breaking it in the course of a game to get your Lava Burst, Salt the Wound, Double Strike. But Mask of Momentum sticks around, it never breaks unless you block with it. So you are getting 2 points of block value out of Mask of Momentum that you don't get with Mask of the Pouncing Lynx. Snapdragon Scalers remains our leg piece of choice. There really isn't any other leg piece that Phi would use. Breeze Rider Boots might as well be Iron Rot legs. And in this list, we are not playing any sort of combo cards. Not in our red slots, not in our blue slots. Snapdragon Scalers is the equipment of choice. You may use it differently in momentum builds because we don't have Pouncing Lynx, we don't have the option to play a Lava Burst, then use our Snapdragon Scalers, then play Assault the Wound. If you draw those 2 cards naturally, yeah, that's absolutely on the table, and it's easier to do with Harmonized Kodachi. 2 Kadachi attacks gets you half the way to Rupture, where Emberblade needs a little help. But overall, the Scalers in momentum builds are more used to fix awkward turns. Turns where you don't have a starter, so you need to play a Snatch, then snap it to turn on your Blaze Headlongs. We run Lava Vein Loyalty red in this build, so it is even more important that we sometimes fix awkward hands by giving a Blaze Headlong go again when we play it on Chainlink 1. Snapdragon is still the best leg piece Phi has access to. We're just using it a bit differently than we do in Pouncing Lynx builds a lot of the time. Shuko is still our arm piece of choice, though it does get more value out of momentum builds than it does out of Emberblade builds, and that is off the back of Brand with Cinder Claw. You'll see in just a bit, we are running the full rainbow Brand with Cinder Claw as opposed to just the reds and the blues. We are more likely to play a blue Brand with Cinder Claw to start our turn as a way of making our Kadachi draconic so that we can pick up our Phoenix Flame. The Phoenix Flame is much more likely to get a Shuko trigger than in our Emberblade builds, where our 1 and 2 base power attacks are generally pitching to fuel the turn. Shuko, of course, also blocks for 2. That may be the value you get out of it over the course of the game, but because Brand with Cinder Claw is more often the game plan here than in Emberblade, you can get more value out of your Shuko by keeping it around longer. As you experiment with the deck, as you test out the play patterns, you will find that you want to hold your Shuko back for your own turns rather than blocking with it for a longer amount of the game. Getting into the 60, we still have Blaze Headlong. It is a great card. It is one of the best cards Fi has available. It does everything we want it to do. It costs 0, it attacks for 4, very often it has Go again. Blaze Headlong is worth mentioning in addition as part of your Mask of Momentum triggers. Sequencing in Kadachi builds is much more important than in Pouncing Lynx builds because we want to make things awkward when our opponent is trying to block that third chain link. And as players get more experience playing against Kadachi builds, you'll find that they are blocking your third chain link, not your second. If your opponent is committed to blocking your second chain link, you are far ahead in this game. So, sequencing for Mask of Momentum, we want our third chain link to have 4 power as much of the time as we can get it. Blaze Headlong, Mounting Anger, Ravenous Rabble are all the attacks that we want to be sending on chain link 3 because they ask our opponent to do more. They have to block with 2 cards, whether that be 2 cards with hand, a card from hand, and armor, 2 pieces of armor, or they need to have a defense reaction available. Blaze Headlong is great for forcing weird, awkward blocks on chain link 3. In addition to just being good damage and a strong card, look for your Blaze Headlong to threaten that Mask of Momentum trigger. I spoke about Rainbow brand with Cinder Claw. Yellow is a new addition to this deck that is not found in Pouncing Lynx builds. The reason is, brand with Cinder Claw and any blue let us attack 4 times with 2 cards. The sequencing is brand with Cinder Claw, pitch your blue, attack with Kadachi, activate Fi by paying a resource, attack with your Phoenix Flame, attack with a Kadachi. Off of 2 cards, you are threatening Mask of Momentum. You are also attacking 4 times, and each attack comes for at least 1 point of damage. And that may seem insignificant, but Kadachi locking is a very real threat in Flesh and Blood. Once you put your opponent down to 1 life, each attack with the Kadachi is lethal. So if both players are only playing with the 4 cards they draw at the end of their turn, one of your cards gets 2 cards from your opponent. But if you are in a 1-to-1 life total situation, and you can keep 2 cards in hand, and those cards are brand with Cinder Claw and any blue, with 2 cards, you'll strip your opponent's entire hand. You will go 4 chain links wide. They will have to block each chain link or else lose the game, and then they don't get to crack back. And now you have a 4-card hand to kill your opponent, which is very possible to do with Fi, as I'm sure you already know. Aside from the endgame 1-to-1 life total situation, brand with Cinder Claw is very good at putting Mask of Momentum triggers on the table. Brand plus any blue is 4 chain links. Add 2 more starters, cards with Go Again, or even a finisher to that hand, and you are putting 6 links on a combat chain pretty consistently. Getting blocks from your opponent, especially if you are throwing in 4 power attacks, you might get 3 cards from your opponent on blocks. And now we're really far ahead in the game. So brand with Cinder Claw is the linchpin of this deck. It makes the deck tick, and we are running the full 9 brand with Cinder Claw. Another addition to Mask of Momentum that Pouncing Lynx does not get to run efficiently is Breaking Point. Breaking Point is an incredible card. It is CNC light. I don't call it CNC at home because Breaking Point is just that good. 1 for 5, the Rupture effect makes it Command and Conquer in that it destroys the arsenal. Yes, heroes can play defense reactions to the Breaking Point chain link, but hopefully your opponent used their defense reaction to stop your Mask Momentum trigger on link 3, and now you're punishing them for having blocked. Regardless of what they blocked with to stop your Mask Momentum trigger, they are now needing to give you another card to stop the Breaking Point effect. Breaking Point comes in for 5. Not even a Sink Below from hand can stop the damage. Hopefully your opponent gave you a card to stop momentum and is now giving you 2 cards to stop Breaking Point. Breaking Point is a fantastic card. It is one of the reasons to play Kodachis over Emberblade, as it is significantly easier to work into a turn. It is also very strong against Lexi, who we will be seeing a lot of in the next ProQuest season, at least until November when Lexi hits Living Legend. Breaking Point is a very compelling reason to run Kodachis with Mask of Momentum in your competitive events. Double Strike is familiar to those of you who have played my Emberblade list, but in Kodachis we are running 3 of them. Putting 2 links on the chain is very important to getting our Mask Momentum triggers. Double Strike is extremely awkward to block when you can open your turn with Kadachi for 1, Kadachi for 1, Double Strike for 1. You are still holding 2 cards in your hand. You still have a resource floating with a second Double Strike in your banished zone. How do you effectively block that? How does your Lexi, who might not have Hornet Sting or Perch Grapplers at this point in the game, effectively block that start? Are they going to give you a whole card to stop 1 point of damage? Are they going to give you a Tunic to stop 1 point of damage? It leads to awkward situations that your opponent doesn't know how to deal with. One of the strengths of Kadachi momentum builds is that they present your opponent with far more opportunities to mess up than Emberblade does. Emberblade largely deals vanilla damage, and it deals a lot of it, and it deals a lot of it quickly, but there aren't too many on-hits. Your opponent just needs to do math and figure out the worst possible situation that would lead them to determine when to block. But Mask of Momentum builds present these weird choices of, do you block this 1? Are you giving me a whole card to block 1, and you have no idea what's coming at the end of this turn? Double Strike does everything that Momentum asks for. It puts links on the chain. It presents awkward triggers. It's also very good in endgame situations. Speaking to attacking 4 times with 2 cards, Double Strike and a blue is Kadachi Kadachi, Double Strike, Double Strike. That sort of play pattern wins games. We have 3 copies of Enlightened Strike. It is a generically good card. 5 will likely always run Enlightened Strike until something changes drastically. Please keep in mind that we are only running 1 copy of Phoenix Flame in this list and no copies of Flamecall Awakening. We can be much less creative with Enlightened Strike. We lose a lot of that flexibility of being able to Flamecall Awakening, to tutor a Phoenix Flame, to bottom that Phoenix Flame to Enlightened Strike. We can't rise from the ashes to bottom our Phoenix Flame with Enlightened Strike. My rule of thumb that I've tried to instill in you through all of my videos regarding Phoenix Flames: don't pitch, banish, or bottom them unless you are going to win the game on the spot, is much more important with this build, because we only have 1 Phoenix Flame and no way to tutor it out of our deck. Be careful with your Enlightened Strikes. It's still very good. You will still often attack for 5, draw a card, use your Snapdragon Scalers to give it go again. You can use it as a pseudo-finisher, 2 cards to do 7 damage. It is great to throw as your 3rd chain link to trigger your Mask of Momentum, as 1 defense reaction does not cover all of Enlightened Strike, but it is much less flexible than in Pouncing Link's builds. Lava Burst is still a great finisher. I don't have much else to say about it. Rupture in general is easier to achieve in Kadachi lists because one card pitched to the Kodachis puts 2 links on the chain. But we can't tutor Lava Burst, we don't run pouncing links in the main board. We are limited to drawing it naturally. Overall, though, it blocks 3, it attacks for 5. With a Shuko trigger, it attacks for 6. There's nothing new to say here. Lava Burst is a very good card. We are running 6 copies of Lava Vein Loyalty. The reds are new to momentum builds. I like Lava Vein Loyalty because it blocks for 3, and very often it attacks for 3 with Go Again, as we are running more Brand with Cinder Claws than we do in Emberblade lists. We are more often able to meet the Draconic Chain Link condition, but Lava Vein Loyalty is a very replaceable card. If you have played a lot with Emberblade, you decide to try out Momentum, and you find that you just miss Flame Call Awakenings with a Phoenix Flame. If you miss having more powerful cards in your deck, Lava Vein Loyalty is completely replaceable. I have found through experience that this card works well for me. 3 with Go Again is good, blocking for 3 is good. Momentum builds tend to be more mid-rangey than Pouncing Links builds because we want the game to go longer so that we have more value from our Mask of Momentum and from our Tiger Stripe Shuko. So being able to block better than Pouncing Links builds is advantageous to us, but Lava Vein Loyalty is probably the most replaceable card in this list. If you find that you just love Flame Call Awakening too much, I highly encourage you to make that swap. Mounting Anger is a very good card. Fi will play this forever. It is slightly more important in momentum builds because of that 4 attack power breakpoint being more awkward to block than in Pouncing Links builds that just really don't care about sequencing. Mounting Anger is a great way to bait your opponent to block. If you find that you cannot put 6 chain links on a combat chain in a turn based on having fewer than 4 cards in your hand, not having the right combination of cards in your hand, you can attack with Mounting Anger on link 1. Most opponents will respect Mounting Anger being 1 for 5 and will block out 4 power. You can then put 3 more links on the table to threaten Mask of Momentum, essentially getting 2 blocks out of 4 or 5 links. Or if they let Mounting Anger hit, you just did 1 for 5, and killing opponents with damage is ultimately what Fi is trying to do. Mounting Anger remains a great card. Always play 3 copies. Here, our lone Phoenix Flame sits in our discard at the start of the game. We cannot tutor it. We cannot get it out of our deck in any way. If we banish it to our Art of War, we will never have another Phoenix Flame in the course of the game. Respect your Phoenix Flame. Don't pitch, banish, or bottom it unless you can win the game on the spot. Otherwise, your Phoenix Flame is extremely important to what you're trying to do, based on Rainbow Brand with Cinder Claw, what I explained about Brand Kadachi Phoenix Flame being a great way to threaten Mask of Momentum off of a 2-card hand. That all remains true. You will play your Phoenix Flame almost every turn of this game. Any given game with Momentum Fi will find a way to bring back the Phoenix Flame and make it relevant in some way. You will trigger Shuko with Phoenix Flame more often than you do in Pouncing Links builds. Phoenix Flame is very strong, it is innocuous, but we only play 1. We don't want to gum up our deck with multiple Phoenix Flames. Ravenous Rabble is largely 0 for 4 with Go Again. That 4 power breaking point is extremely important to what we're trying to do. Ravenous Rabble remains a good card. always play it unless something better comes along, because sometimes it's 0 for 2, and that's really annoying. We are still playing 2 Rise from the Ashes. It is a Draconic starter. Sometimes it is 0 for 4, go again. Sometimes you get to do cute tricks where you will play Rise from the Ashes, play a starter for 6, Phoenix Flame for 1, close the chain, brand with Cinder Claw for 3, pitch your blue, Kadachi for 1, activate Phi, Phoenix Flame for 2. Because we play Rainbow Brand and we are putting more Draconic links on the chain with Kadachi and have floating resources, we can do many more cute plays with closing the combat chain and activating Phi later on in a turn to recur our Phoenix Flame twice. But for the most part, Rise remains a 0 for 3 that is sometimes a 0 for 4 that can start your chain on an awkward turn. Rising Resentment and Ronin Renegade are Draconic head jabs. Rising Resentment is sometimes relevant against Icelander when she does not fully block out the damage, and you can banish a 0-cost card to cheat the Frostbite tax. But a lot of the time, it's just 0 for 3 go again that puts a Draconic link on the chain to get your Phoenix Flame back. The same goes for Ronin Renegade. Snatch is a 0 for 4, great way to end a turn, great 1-card hand. With Snapdragon Scalers, it is a great Link 1 play that turns on your Blaze Headlongs, that baits multiple blocks from an opponent when you are trying to later threaten a Mask of Momentum trigger. Snatch is a great card, it's a pseudo finisher, we'll never replace it. Art of War is exactly what Phi is trying to do. Everything Phi wants to do, Art of War helps us do it better. It is worse in momentum builds than in pouncing links builds, because our average turn deals less damage than we do with Emberblade builds. Our attacks are weaker, our weapons are weaker, sequencing matters more, so we may be inclined to lose a point of damage here or there if it means making our Mask of Momentum trigger harder to block. Art of War is still a very good card. You will still run it in most matchups. You are still excited to set up 5-card Art of War turns, but if in the course of testing you find that your Art of Wars are less satisfying than in your Pouncing Link's Emberblade builds, just know that that is a feature, not a bug of this list. We play 3 Salt the Wounds in this build as opposed to the 2 that you've seen in my Emberblade list. Salt the Wounds average power goes up when we are playing with Kodachis because 2 resources puts 2 links on the chain rather than 1. Opponents are much less incentivized to block Kodachis than they are to block Emberblade. And Salt the Wound itself pitches for 2 Emberblade attacks, so you may be incentivized in a turn to pitch your Salt to put 6 links on a chain. If you have a Brand with Cinder Claw and a Salt the Wound in hand, you can attack with a Brand, pitch your Salt to a Kadachi, activate your Phi to pick up your Phoenix Flame. You can also, with a 2-card hand, Salt and a Snatch, Salt and a Blaze Headlong, Salt and a Ravenous Rabble, attack with Kadachi, Kadachi 4, letting you trigger Mask of Momentum to find a card to put into your arsenal. Salt is a very good card in Kadachi builds. It will deal more damage on average than in Pouncing Link's Emberblade builds, and it pitches for the Kadachi. So we were playing 3 of them instead of just 2. Soulbead Strike, Warmonger's Diplomacy are blue 3-block cards. They pay for Kadachi and Phi activations. Soulbead Strike can attack. Warmonger's Diplomacy sometimes hoses heroes that need that non-attack action. They are the same as an Emberblade. They fulfill the same function, and that's why they're here. Moving on to the sideboard. Command & Conquer, still here. We only have 2 in the board. This is because more of our 80 cards are taken up by weapons. Big downside of Kadachi lists compared to Emberblade lists is that every Kadachi list will also run Searing Emberblade. 3 of our 80 slots are taken up by weapons, as opposed to Emberblade lists that often don't run Kodachis. And the 3rd copy of Command & Conquer is a casualty of this. Now we have 3 Breaking Points in the main deck. Breaking Point is very achievable in a Kadachi build, so we can think of it more like we are running 5 copies of Command & Conquer into Lexi and Azalea and Riptide. But for our 2-card Command & Conquers, we only get to do that twice. Now, an advantage of Command & Conquer in a Kadachi build is that with a Command & Conquer and a blue, that is a 7-card hand, because we can work Kadachi into the chain before Command & Conquer. Emberblade doesn't get to do that. Emberblade has to waste their floating resource, but Kadachi gets to throw in just a bit of extra damage on those CNC turns. Still running 3 Reinforce the Line, still running 3 Sink Belows. These are as important in Kadachi builds as they are in Emberblade builds. Bravo dominated Starstrucks still hurt just as much as they did in Pouncing Lynx lists. We run 60 reacts to be safe. We are still on 2 energy potions, Fandal Spring Tunic, Pouncing Lynx, Emberblade, and Tide Flippers. All of these cards fulfill the same purpose that they did in our Emberblade Pouncing Lynx lists. Pouncing Lynx itself and Emberblade are here for specific matchups, which I will cover now. This is our matchup tab. Check back in the future. I fully intend to write brief matchup guides for each of these heroes. I don't expect you all to rewatch any of my videos just in anticipation of events. I recommend it, but I do want to put matchup guides in for each of these heroes. Just quickly, I will go through the sideboard and general path to victory against each of these heroes. For the assassins, Arachne and Uzuri, we are boarding out our Kodachis, our Mask Momentums, and our Art of Wars. We are switching to our Pouncing Lynx and Emberblade plan. We are also bringing in 6 reacts and 2 Command & Conquers for a total of 65 cards in the matchup. We are slightly more susceptible to fatigue in these matchups because we cannot juggle our Phoenix Flames. We only have the 1 Phoenix Flame, so 2 blues that would be worth 5 points of damage with our Shuko in an Emberblade build with multiple Phoenix Flames is now worth 4 points of damage. We are pitching a blue to attack with 2 Kodachis, and we're attacking with our 2nd blue. So we are losing cards from our deck, we are bringing ourselves closer towards fatigue, and there really is no reason to juggle that Phoenix Flame. Now this is slightly offset by Kodachis each being a point of damage. If you are in a 1 life to 1 life situation against an assassin, they still need to block those Kodachis. You are taking as many cards from them on blocks as you would with your Emberblade or Shuko'd Phoenix Flame, but it's worth noting we are more susceptible to fatigue, so we're running 65 cards instead of our 60. Because we run Kodachis, you need to be aware of frailty. Frailty is a huge problem in Kadachi lists, as opposed to Emberblade, where fatigue, lists, where frailty only mitigates 1 point of damage. Against Kodachis, it mitigates 2, and if you have a card in your arsenal, it mitigates 3. So against assassins, we don't want to be putting cards in our arsenal anyway. We want to play around Command & Conquer, leave no witnesses. but it is especially important that we take value away from Frailty. So we are running our Emberblade. We are expecting to get blocked a significant number of times by our assassin opponent. They are completely fine with blocking 2 Mask of Momentum triggers in a turn, so we are running Pouncing Links to take advantage of low light situations where our opponent just can't block 5 Chain Links or just doesn't want to block our Phoenix Flame, and now that Phoenix Flame is worth 6 or 7 points of damage. Against Azalea, we are adopting our Emberblade Pouncing Links plan of just kill them. We board out our Rise from the Ashes, our Kadachi, and our Mask of Momentum. We board in our Mask of the Pouncing Links, our Emberblade, and our Command and Conquer. We do not want to play a long attrition game against Azalea where we take advantage of her bad blocks. We want to take advantage of her off turns to just blow her up. So we're running our Emberblade, we're running our Pouncing Links, and we're still looking to coincide those with an Art of War. Rise from the Ashes remains as bad against Red in the Ledger as it was in our Emberblade list. So we are boarding it out, and we are boarding Command and Conquer in for a little more arsenal hate and a stronger 1-action turn against Red in the Ledger. For Bravo, we maintain the same strategy, boarding in 6 D-Reacts, boarding out our Art of War, 2 Rise from the Ashes that play very poorly against Spinal Crush, and 1 Brand with Cinder Claw. We are still able to pull off our Brand Kadachi Phoenix Flame turn frequently enough that we are not harming our chances of winning the game. We get very good in low light situations where Bravo no longer has armor to block those Kodachis. But we are boarding out the Brand to make room for our defense reactions. Against Briar, Dash, Phi, we're making no changes. The deck is just fine as it is. Briar and Dash play Crown of Providence. Our Command and Conquer goes down in value. Breaking Point is still just good. It does the things we want it to do. We also don't have anything to board into the deck if we took out our Breaking Points. These 3 heroes stay the same. Dorinthia remains the same as in our Emberblade list. Reinforce the lines coming in. I am still playing with this idea of running Reinforce over Sink Below. In case Emboldened Blade catches on, we want to dodge the condition of having our defense reaction destroyed, instance not affected by Emboldened Blade. Rise from the Ashes and Double Strike are just low value 2-block cards that we would rather board out of the deck when we are trying to reset the Dawnblade. Against Dromai, we are bringing in 2 Poppers. We are boarding out 2 Breaking Points. Many Dromais have internalized the strategy of only arsenaling Sigil of Solace or defense reactions. Breaking Point doesn't affect either of those. Our Dromai will just play the card out of arsenal, and we lose our value of destroying that arsenal. Command and Conquer is a popper against problematic dragons, and punishes our Dromai for arsenaling a defense reaction. Against Icelander, we are swapping over to an Emberblade Pouncing Links plan. I just find it to be better. I have worked with Mask of Momentum and 2 Kodachis. Against Icelander, we take advantage of the Hypothermia ban from months and months ago. Icelander is very good at blocking the first Mask of Momentum trigger. She is very bad at blocking the second one. She doesn't have good enough armor to do it more than once. And if we are taking 2 cards out of Icelander's hand per turn, it is much more difficult for her to fuse Aether Ice Vein. That said, blowing her up with Emberblade and Pouncing Links is, in my experience, just a more consistent strategy. Emberblade off of a 1-card hand, if we only have a blue to pitch for the blade, is a stronger turn than pitching for 2 Kodachis. We are not susceptible to disruption in this line of play. If we attack with our Emberblade, we float a resource. We have nothing left to do on that turn, so any sort of frostbite does not affect us, and we have a floating resource to pay for Arcane Barrier against a Waning Moon or an Aether Hail. I just find it to be a stronger strategy, and so I am boarding out my Mask of Momentum, my Kodachis, my Furnace, and my Scalers. I'm boarding in Emberblade Pouncing Links, as well as Tunic and Tide Flippers, which remain the go-to chest and leg pieces against Icelander. Breaking Point is very bad against the hero. It does not have natural go again, is not significantly above rate. Icelander will not have an arsenal most of the time when Breaking Point would hit. Largely, it is a dead card, so we're boarding it out for our 2 energy potions and a Command and Conquer. I'm not particularly excited about Command and Conquer in this matchup. Sometimes we hit the defense reaction in Arsenal, but in most cases, it is just better than Breaking Point. Against Kano, usually I would say it's a free win for Kano. Our Kodachis take up too much sideboard space to dedicate space to Arcane Barrier 2 or Spell Void 1. So we board out our Furnace, our Kodachis, and our Mask of Momentum. We board in our Emberblade, our Pouncing Links, and our Spring Tunic. And we just try to high roll the Kano with an Art of War or a double finisher turn before they can combo off against us. If you watched my calling retrospective, I lost to 2 Kanos. I would overall say that this matchup is a concession on our part. We just don't have the sideboard space to dedicate to Kano. If you have local Kano players, you could board out some defense reactions, cut them out of your list, put in Spell Void 1, Arcane Barrier 2. I have a very good Bravo player locally and need those 6 spaces for sync blows and reinforce the lines. But if you were looking for cuts for a Kano, that's where I would start. Against Katsu, we're boarding in 3 sync blows. We're boarding out 2 Rise from the Ashes and 1 Warmonger's Diplomacy. Rise from the Ashes, just a low value card. We only have 1 Phoenix Flame in the list, so it is very often 0 for 3. And Warmongers is a dead card against Ninja. If you are playing against the Tiger-based Katsu list, Diplomacy can be pretty good. But against the standard Dishonor line Katsu, bad card. You can board 1 out for sync blows. Against Levia, we are making no changes, except that we are boarding out our Kadachi Momentum, boarding in our Pouncing Links Emberblade. Levia's plan into Phi is to banish a number of cards with Blood Debt, flip into Blasphemet, and finish the game with multiple 5-card hands. Kadachi Momentum is a slower game plan that works off getting more value over multiple turns. We don't want the game against Levia. We don't want the game against Levia to go long. We want to end it quickly to reduce her time to build up that blood debt. And we want to set up an Art of War double finisher turn to push her past the point of being able to Blasphemet and putting block the Levia, strip her hand, let her kill herself with blood debt, plan back on the table. Against Lexi, we're boarding out low impact Rise from the Ashes. We are boarding in high impact Command and Conquers. We play our 5 Command and Conquers against Lexi. We try to disrupt her while we set up a big Art of War turn and kill her that way. Compared to Azalea, where we run Mask of the Pouncing Links and Emberblade, against Lexi, we are keeping our Kodachis and Mask of Momentum, and this is because we need to do 2 things. Take advantage of Lexi's bad armor and make her interact with us. Phi loses fair games to Lexi, and Phi loses unfair games to Lexi. Her average average turn cycle does more damage with more on-hits than ours does, and her Rain Razor's 3-of-a-kind turns do more damage with more on-hits than our Art of War turns do. So we need to strip Lexi's hand. We need to take her off of 4- and 5-card hands and put her on 3- and 4-card hands as much as possible. And we do that by throwing 6 links on a combat chain to force her to block, or to throw 1/1/4 on a combat chain to force her to block with multiple cards. If Lexi gives us intellect 5, we win that. And if we can force Lexi into bad positions often enough, where she cannot string disruption or powerful turns together, that buys us time to set up a big Art of War turn. Against Bolton, we are getting more aggressive to play around the possibility of random combos. Furnace, Kadachi, Momentum come out. Spring Tunic, Pouncing Links, Emberblade go in. We are just trying to set up the fastest kill with the most disruption that we can. We board out 2 Enlightened Strikes. We board in 2 Command and Conquers. And between 3 Breaking Points, 2 Command and Conquers, and 3 Warmonger's Diplomacies, we have a very good chance at preventing Bolton from ever comboing off. Uzuri, just like Arachne, we are boarding 65 cards into the main deck. We are cutting Mask of Momentum and Kadachi to bring in Mask of the Pouncing Links and Searing Emberblade. And against our 2 Rune Blades, Viscerai and Vincent, we are making no changes. The game is fine to go long. We will outrace either one of these heroes, and although they usually present very good armor, we can strip that armor pretty quickly, and now we are forcing them to block from hand. Viscerai and Vincent play enough non-attack actions that don't block for 3. They have a lot of 2 blocks in the deck, so we can really take advantage of their junky hands with our Mounting Angers, our Ravenous Rabbles, our Blaze Headlongs, and our E-Strikes for 5. That's the deck tech. A quick one this time compared to last week's, but last week's deck tech really laid a good foundation for most of this deck. This is what I will be bringing to ProQuest. I believe that Kadachi Momentum builds are better positioned against Lexi. I believe that Kodachis are stronger against Dromai, and with Dromai getting Tome of the Imperial Flame, I am more worried about her than I've ever been. I do not believe that Dromai is the free win that she has been up until this point, and I believe that 5 players who sit down against her expecting that free win are going to be punished. Surgical kills with Kodachis and Phoenix Flames are so much easier and possible against Dromai. A 2-card hand against a Dromai with an Asvalai on the table get you a card draw. Brand with Cinder Claw at Dromai's face, Kadachi, Phoenix Flame at the Asvalai get you that card draw. A blue to pitch for 2 Kodachis on a Chromai or a Kyloria get you 2 links on your way to your draw effect, while also leaving you a floating resource, and you didn't waste a point of damage by killing them with an Emberblade. The ease of triggering Tiger Stripe Shuko on a 2-power attack in this deck means that you are killing Yenderai much more reliably and consistently without overkill damage than you would with Emberblade Pouncing Links. Kadachi games will be going up on my channel starting within the next week or 2. I have a few Emberblade games recorded and ready to cast, but after that, we will be going back to Kadachi Momentum. I will give you all some gameplay examples and tips to help you succeed. Aside from that, I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I hope you found it useful. The deck list is in the video description below. Feel free to ask any questions or give any comments in the comments section. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. I hope you all enjoyed this. I will see you all out there. Take care.